From the Multifamily Studios in Scottsdale, Arizona, with Patrick and Carrie Antrim. Live today in Multifamily.
All right, good
All right,
morning,
good to see you guys.
Good afternoon, depending on where you're tuning in from. It looks like we already have some people in the house.
Texas is always showing up
Texas,
strong.
Florida, Georgia, Arizona, Massachusetts, California. Thanks, guys, for tuning in.
Yeah, now if you're watching on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, gosh, where else? I think that's it, right? Facebook,
I think that's
YouTube.
it.
You can go to multifamilylive.com. You can see the comments and participate in the live show. We do some polls, some discussions, and things like that. But if you're not jumping over to multifamilylive.com, you can put a comment below, and we'll be able to ask some of the questions that you might have for our upcoming guests. So, well, good morning.
Good morning. Did you want to introduce us? We kind of just jumped right in.
Sure. So I'm Patrick Antrim. This is my wife, Carrie Antrim. We're the founders of Multifamily Leadership and Multifamily Women.
That's right.
And we bring you content around innovation, technology, and leadership. And recently, yesterday, we had some fun on our Instagram Live.
Yeah,
well, I did.
You did.
Yeah, you popped in for a little bit.
I popped in. I said hello. Okay.
Well, let's refresh that. Let's see who we,
because I know who we've got in the house here.
Yeah, just hit refresh there so I can give a shout out to who's in the audience from all different venues: LinkedIn, Twitter,
Facebook,
and
YouTube.
YouTube, yes. and then that'll ultimately go on Multifamily Biz, which is the largest media site in multifamily, serving, I think, north of 1.7 million monthly viewers. So exciting stuff there. So we've got a great show. Talk to us about what's coming up.
We do. So as Patrick mentioned, if you would like to go to live.multifamilystudios.com, you can participate in this engagement that we have going on throughout the show. We're going to have some different polls and different questions, and you can interact with our guest today, who I will announce right now is Kim Cross. We are so excited to have her on the show. We're going to be talking pricing strategy, how not to panic and regret pricing decisions that come back to bite you.
That's going on right now. There's a lot of, not confusion, but definitely different groups doing different things.
Right.
Kim's going to talk to those about what technology can do to serve a role in that process. So definitely one of the most amazing human beings, by the way.
Yes.
And beyond that, just our go-to when it comes to tech. I mean, I get clients all the time. They're like, I'm having a problem with this and that. And she's the person that we go to for referrals for that. So.
Yeah. Quick shout out, we've got Maryland in the house, Ontario. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We're glad to have you today. Keep it rolling in. Let us know where you're watching from.
That's fun. Okay, so Instagram Live yesterday, we launched a lot of new things that we've announced. Essentially, if you were to think about a new trade association, what that looks like, we talked about that and what our involvement is in that. The disruption of the trade show. What else? The future of events. So fun stuff happening. Stay tuned as we get closer. We're going to really help you think about those 80% things that have to happen for you to lift higher in your organization, sell more products, innovate your brand, whatever that may be. Most of those 80% factors come from strategy and mindset, and not from just having information and tactics and tools and tricks. So we talked yesterday about the status quo and our safety in numbers and really being part of the herd and really stepping out of that herd and creating a new world for the life that we're going to live beyond this imagination of what a multifamily life looks like coming back from what our customers just went through. So it's not just what we went through, but the heroes are the residents, not the owners, not the managers, but the residents are going to want these virtual tours. They're going to want to know that life can change for them, that they're going to feel confident in the way that they live and things like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hey, I just popped over to our other channels here on LinkedIn. I want to give a shout out to Bruce Norvell from Texas.
Bruce.
We got Dan from New York. We've got Jason from Atlanta. Hey, Jason. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Jason who? I want to know which.
Jason Stoughton.
Hey, Jason,
Yeah.
yes. We've got John Maxwell team in the house. John.
We also have some Facebookers here. Stephanie Dixon from Texas. We've got Jennifer Pasquale from Charlotte, North Carolina, representing Village Green. That's exciting. Thanks for joining us. And we've got Randy Mills from Michigan.
All
I
right.
am originally from Ohio, so I have some feelings about Michigan. I'm just kidding. Nothing but love.
Okay, we won't get into that now, but Jason, we got to get Jason on the show.
Yeah.
I'm sure he has a few topics that he can serve.
I
I know
think he probably
great
does.
webinar yesterday, so good stuff with him. Definitely, if you're on LinkedIn, follow that man. He's doing some great stuff. Okay, so what's up?
Okay, so
In the news, do we?
in the know, yeah.
What can they do? They've got the ability to submit good news. If you're on
Oh, yeah.
multifamilylive.com, there's a button.
Scroll down
or
to
a
the
link.
bottom of the page, and it says
Submit good news.
Submit Good News. Pretty simple. So listen, if you've got promotions happening, if you're winning awards, anything that's good, we want to know about and we want to shout it out. So on this show. So like we said, scroll down to the bottom of the page, live.multifamilystudios.com, click Submit Good News, and it's going to come to me. You can send me photos, you can send me press releases, you can send me videos. You can just say hello if you want. But we will collect all that and shout it out on the show.
That's great. That's great. All right. So, shall we go to our guest? Or do you want to talk about other things?
Well, I did have one announcement. I just wanted to mention that the official Best Places to Work Multifamily program is open. This is the 2021
Yep.
program. So your company can get registered for that. Right now it's open. You're going to go to bestplacestoworkmultifamily.com. It has all the information there that you need, all the details. However, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Patrick and I, and we are happy to answer anything you need. So this is going to be
very cool things
big
about this
year.
program. We are already way ahead on registrations for that than
Yes.
last year. The exciting thing is we're getting a lot of feedback from companies. We're talking about, we've always done this research. This is the 7th year we're doing this, but this year, more importantly than ever, getting that, checking in on our employees, not to give them survey
Yes.
fatigue, but to look at this, a program that they're used to going through, but also one that benchmarks across the industry and not just, part of one trade group, right? So this is an all-encompassing program that researches who are creating those healthy organizations. And this is a time when our employees need it most. And they definitely have the time to do this. They're in front of screens all the time. So
Yes.
let's make sure that we continue to grow that program and create an opportunity for you to learn and look at maybe what we learned with rents. Maybe there were some surprises there of what we thought and what we feared happening, but maybe in this research we'll see some new findings as well.
I think so. So before we go to our guest, Kim, I'm going to just mention again, if you are on live.multifamilystudios.com, you can interact with us. We'll have polls. You can ask questions directly to Kim, and we'll do some Q&A at the end, and it should be a good time.
All right, we've got a question here already, but let's go to Kim. Do you want me to welcome Kim, or?
No, I'm happy to do it. I thought we were going straight to it. All right, Kim is the founder and president of the KSC Group. Kim has 25 years of experience, primarily focused on the IT and software needs of the multifamily industry. She has worked for property management companies like Lincoln Property Company and the Prime Group, directly managing the business applications teams and IT initiatives. Kim is focused on large client implementations and specialized product offerings. Kim, we are so glad to have you on the show today.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I've enjoyed attending the Multifamily Leadership Summit and the Women's Summit, and I'm a huge fan. So
well, thank you.
I am talking and promoting y'all constantly. So thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Sweet.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, you've been at those shows and had the opportunity to learn not only what other people are doing stuff, but you've been like that community organizer and leader and mentor for many of the women. That's been a great thing to have you step up for some of that stuff.
Thank you. I love our industry. So it's helped me to raise a family. It's helped me to find a career. It's helped me to find my passion. So I love everything about our industry. I could talk for hours.
Yeah. So, well, let me ask for a moment, step back from this conversation. How did you get started in this industry?
Ironically, it was through a attempt to hire agency, and Lincoln Property Company was looking for somebody to come in and be an admin assistant, and they were putting computers on site, so they needed a technical person. And so that's what I did. I started off, and we went from a manual system and put in those DOS dual floppy. You got to pick either the amber or the green screen, way more expensive than the computers that we have to offer. And that made me over fax machines and telephone systems and all that. So I spent 10 years at Lincoln and rose from a regional office to being down at the corporate office and managing the overall applications teams. So Lincoln's a family to me. So I will forever love them.
Yeah, great group. And having been through all that process, being a technology expert, that matters, right? Being able to know what the conversation that's happening on site and all the way through the ranks of the different perspectives people have when challenges come up.
It does. What would occur is Lincoln was fee managed. They were a developer. They were an owner. And they gave me a lot of opportunities because they were a fee manager. They ran all sorts of software systems. And so I became very software agnostic per se. But the executive team would decide upon a path or an initiative, and then they would bring me in to fulfill that requirement. And I always have the philosophy of you need to go do what a person is, or you need to discover what they do. So I would go out on site and spend time with the site teams, see what they were doing, asking a lot of questions. Ironically, I actually leased an apartment. I was at an apartment and I had heard their speech so many times, and they were out of the office, and normally they lock the door, and they didn't. And somebody walked in. So I just grabbed the tablet, did the speech, took them on a tour, leased the apartment. And I cracked up when I got the bonus on my paycheck later on. I was like, well, heck, never had that happen before. But
I love that.
so it's truly walking a mile in somebody's shoes. But to be able to understand when you walk into a site and you've got residents and vendors coming in and the phones are ringing and what the goals and initiatives are. So it truly has been a blessing to be exposed and to be exposed to connecting two different disparate softwares. We want this, but we want this, and then understanding how the two communicate. So then you understand and learn, and it was back in the day when technology wasn't there, and we built a data warehouse. And so then we had to gather data. So I have loved it. And to watch where we're at right now with the whole hashtag prop tech, I am loving that in multifamily. That's one of my favorite things. And to go to shows and to see all the innovation that's happening is truly exciting to me. So.
Yeah, so I think that there's the real estate transaction, the fundamentals of collecting rents, leading teams, all of those things, and then there's what you've really focused on is that technology. Where do you see those opportunities for not only women but also for those that are looking to re-envision what's next for multifamily, as we've sort of been forced into an accelerated disruption here in many cases? Where do you see those opportunities for people in multifamily?
It's interesting what I've watched since middle of March, where choices escalated, right? Multifamily was sort of this smooth moving, and here's technology. I remember when renters insurance, making it mandatory, was sort of like iffy, and now you see it everywhere. Right. And so I've kind of watched the ebb and flow, how technology or thoughts come in and the slow adoption. So what I've seen recently that started kind of being the hot topics were the virtual tours, the unmanned tours, the smart apartments, and people were looking at these options, but they weren't embracing them. And then this just forced it. It's like, nope, we want the virtual tours. We need to get people into these apartments. We'll, unlock the unit. They can come look at it themselves, with the social distancing. And so you saw companies now looking at the platforms that they bought. So virtual tours is huge, right? And what they didn't know is the software that they had already purchased had the capability to load those virtual tours. And so that's where it came. So you have an executive that makes a decision. Okay, we're embracing virtual tours. What do we do? They either go find a provider, or they have the platform, and then the managers out there making the tour, and then they send it to us, the middle guys, or the middle guys that are on your team to load it. And so it has been that. It has been the payment piece of it. It's been deferred rental agreements. It's been, how do I, without a piece of paper, asking if my resident has a hardship? How do we make this electronic? So those are the things that people are now embracing. Affordable housing has never allowed electronic lease signing. And then HUD basically opened the doors and said, yes, we were going to allow you to do electronic applications with the disclaimer of they need to sign this at a later date. So your affordable housing sector now didn't have the tools in place to accommodate that. And so they come to teams such as myself and say, how do we make this happen? Right. And so that's kind of where we come in and play. And we were trusted advisors to a lot of people in the industry to help them navigate and fit their plan.
So, question for you. In a lot of ways, multifamily, before what we just have gone through here with the coronavirus, the COVID-19, however you frame it, the new way of working, everybody was winning, right? Like occupancy was strong, economic occupancy strong. We had people working, the greater marketplace was thriving, innovations happening, healthcare, things are good in multifamily. And so when that happens and we're not leveraging tools that we've already invested in, right? We're relying on sort of the demand side maybe, or just the old school way of just like, well, let's find a way to be better on our shops and convert people and show the amenities and things like that. But the reality is, in a lot of ways, our success didn't prepare us for something unexpected like this. And I mentioned yesterday in my live stream about safety in numbers, and in a lot of ways, the industry we've let ourselves down. Like, we're not prepared like the restaurants were ready for with Grubhub, and they could still serve and sell their inventory, cheese, butter, milk, eggs, and things like that, and become almost like a grocer in this process. But in a lot of ways, our success has impacted our ability to think that we need to change, we need to innovate. Do you find do you see obviously we've had to because of the forced situation, but do you see people shifting that perspective? Like, I'm now more open-minded to a new way, or a new plug-in here, or a new way to connect?
Exactly. I think that when this is over, there are tools that were implemented, changes that were made that companies are going to adopt. And the virtual tours is one, because what I'm finding is people are still out there leasing apartments. They're still moving in. They're still going online. They still have issues going on in their lives. They're still renting apartments. They're renewing their leases. More people now are working at home. And so how's that bandwidth working for you? I loved all the posts where they put a musician or the fitness person in a central location and everybody came out on their patios and balconies. And that's not innovative, but it's something that we never thought of doing before. So while we built these apartment communities and wanted to be a sense of community and bring people together, this has truly done that. And so now we're looking for ways to communicate with our residents, more. Everybody who had a resident portal was able to go in and send texts and send communications and all that. And then what I love is we had technology partners in our industry that said, hey, if you don't have this technology already, we're going to give this to you for free. Sign up, because we want you to be able to safely communicate with your residents. We saw people, adopting payment plans, or it's just completely changed. And I think the one thing that I've worked at home a lot. I've had a lot of my employers be open minded to that, and yet that hasn't been necessarily the case, especially for an on site personnel. We were pretty hard minded of, you got to be in that office all the time. And so it's shifted that to now I think we can redefine that workspace a little bit, and how we are able to engage. I can very well see the future being, not just a little chat bot, but a video conversation of a potential resident, that they're out of state or they're not able to come in, but you can basically take them on a personal virtual tour right then and there and still have a very personal experience without them coming into the office at that time. So I'm excited to see new ideas and changes, and this just escalated it. This just went, I was so close-minded. Even when it came to payments, we had rules. We don't take partial payments. If you don't pay after the late fee, we only take a cashier's check. We don't take credit cards on resident rent, but we'll take it on your application fee. And with this, and without the ability for people to come in, it was, no, let's open it up. We will take your payment any way, shape, or form, not chickens or cows, but we'll take credit cards and we'll do partial payments. And it's been great, because the results are, April looked pretty good. When we polled, and what I'm hearing is April rent didn't end up being as scary as we thought it was going to be. So that's a success. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah, it sounds like the old integrations. I mean, it seems scary, but you seem to be making some of those things a little less complicated for others.
Hey, I'm going to jump in real quick. We have a shout out for you, Kim, from Starla Turnbow. She says, love Kim, have worked with her on many projects over the past 20 plus years.
Oh yeah, so Starla I met when I was at Lincoln. We managed one of those sites, and Starla has been a champion. And I will tell you, 7 years ago, on March 1st, on 2013, it was just me, and I was a single mom raising 3 kids, and we had a family discussion, and I decided I want to follow a dream. And I was going to give myself 30 days. And if I had a client within 30 days, I would know that I was on the right path. So I just did my internal network, and I sent my emails out, and Starla was the first one to respond and said, I need you. And she was my very first client. So
that is so awesome.
Forever in my heart. So thank you, Starla. And she's doing amazing in Houston. And I believe she's the president of the Houston Apartment Association. There's some great things going on in Houston. Not to mention,
great.
That's beautiful.
Amazing
That's
work
beautiful.
at SMI.
I love stories. Those stories,
that's so sweet.
they impact people. And when you do one thing, and many years later, people remember those things. So speaking of that, given all the changes and adjustments that we've all had to make, how do we make sure that what we do now in this period, that it doesn't come back to bite us? So let's talk deeper about actually pricing, what people are doing with portfolios, and what are you seeing with technology. So talk to me about, how do we not sort of overreact?
Yeah, and that, going into March, we knew this was coming, and companies were starting to be proactive, and it was an unknown. We felt that a tidal wave was coming, but we were also afraid it was going to turn into a tsunami. And people started to panic. Companies started to say, all right, we're going to turn off revenue management. We're just going to turn it off because we're afraid that that system is going to offer too high of rents, or the algorithm isn't going to work. And so that you find two different schools of thought. You have people who are strong believers in revenue management and people who don't believe in revenue management, and want to price it on their own. And then you have folks that just have budgeted increases each time. So for the team of revenue management, the advice that we gave to them is do not turn off revenue management. If you are a pilot and you're on an airplane, you turn it on autopilot after you've got it up to a certain point, and you turn it on autopilot and then you go. But if a storm's coming, you turn that off of autopilot and you use your instincts, and you use your education and your skills and your experience to weather it, right? And that's basically what the revenue management tool is. Typically, then, when you're heading into the storm, if you've had that on autopilot, these systems take sometimes 45 to 60 days to get dialed in towards getting you that pricing that you're comfortable with. And it's what you're comfortable with. To turn that off and dismantle means that you're not feeding the system the data it needs. You put it on, you take it and put it on manual, you review the prices, accept it, and then the system is going to self-correct, right? It's a learning system. So the system is going to understand, it's forecasting what's going on in our industry. And then when you come out the other side, you'll get to a point quicker where you can turn it back on to autopilot. When you turn the system off and you're still doing the same thing, you're manually adjusting your rents, but then you come out 90 days later, we're talking a very short window of time. And then it's going to take you another 45 to 60 days to get it back to where you wanted it to be, right? Whereas if you just make some adjustments, you're going to weather the storm and then get back to your products as usual. The panic that I see is we have tools in place and we want to stop them because of a 90-day potential situation, and then we're going to have to turn them back on. So what are our alternatives to interject our experience in there, or other policies, procedures, methods to allow us to still go back to those tools when the crisis is over?
Yeah, so what do you think that is in terms of the camps that people sit in? Like, they don't want to have revenue management, and then the ones that do, what's keeping them on either on the fence or on the other side of it?
Sometimes we have some clients that have smaller properties, and so in order to enact these types of programs, you need a little bit more density. So maybe they want to use the product or embrace the product, but the requirements of the pricing engine, they don't meet those requirements, and so they can only put it on some of their portfolio. Others just don't have a trust or a faith in allowing the algorithms or the machines to come up with a price. They feel more comfortable when they determine the price based on, what their competitors or what's going on around them. So sometimes I think it's a trust or a control factor in not selecting that. Sometimes it's a cost factor. There is a cost in using these tools, and when you're looking at what are the basics I need to do to run a property? Well, you need a website, you need property management software. Typically, you need a payments software. Now you need an electronic lease file, system. There's certain software that now, where you used to just run property management, now you need a lot more to meet the requirements of our industry, and the residents expect these things from us. So,
yeah.
I just wanted to jump in again and give a quick shout out. We have some folks over on Facebook that are watching. We've got Monique James from Colorado. We have Jamin Harkness from Atlanta. Thanks for joining us, Jamin. Jamin was our guest last week. We've got Jerry Hunt from North Carolina, Melissa Kenny from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, if you're watching on LinkedIn, Facebook, feel free to put questions in for Kim. We're monitoring those, and we will get to those during our Q&A. It looks like, Kim, you also got some family love going on here from Aunt Rosie.
Oh, I can't believe Aunt Rosie. Oh, so Aunt Rosie is just amazing. She's been a pillar of the community in Fort Worth and has given great service. She's been my role model, my mentor, my rock. So I did send a text to my family and I said, okay, guys, anytime I get scared, running a business can be a bit tough, and so anytime I just reach out to family, and that makes me happy. And shout out to Baton Rouge, because I actually lived in Baton Rouge, went to high school at Woodland, and went to LSU. So shout
Oh,
out
there
to
you
whoever was in
go.
Baton. So yeah, even though I'm native Texan, I did a short stint there. So
Yeah, that's great. Well, I love that you've got a good, it sounds like you have a good support system behind you, which I know is so important. It looks like Jamin has a comment here. Rev management has so many more benefits: less auditing, gives prospects and residents a choice on new leases and renewals, integrates great to paperless environment. So glad we have it. She's right, it's not cheap.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting, and those are some great comments from Jamin. How has all of that technology, if it be the machine learning piece and all the things that happen behind the scenes, how does that change with sort of partial payments and the structure of maybe what has been modified recently?
it was really interesting. There were some camps that you might have a property that takes a larger amount of money orders, and the systems, the vendors that are out there in the space have tools available that allow that person to take their money order to thousands of pay places and actually post it on the resident ledger. So you have to look at your clientele and not exclude people. And so they weren't embracing this technology, and now they needed to. Well, luckily, if they already had a payment, software in place, it was really just checking a box or giving that resident the instructions on how that tool works. What we saw was, like I said, a majority of companies adopted the thought process of, we're going to take ACH and credit card on applications, but when it comes into move-in funds or rents, we're not going to take credit cards because there's going to be a fee. ACH fees are minimal, credit card fees are more expensive. So what you had was companies would come and say, the other thing was they were willing to bear the burden of that cost temporarily because it was a benefit to get that credit card payment, even though it was a higher percentage. And they didn't want their resident to bear the burden. And so what we did was we created, and that burden is paid by the resident, and the management company doesn't see that fee, right? That goes to the payment provider. So what they did was create a concession code, is what we advised them. And we advised them also to set up a GL account in their accounting system that was a COVID-19 account, so they could track all the expenses, any late fees that they had to waive, any concessions that they gave, any payments that they bore the cost of, so that at the end of the day they could track what was going on, because there may come a time where they can report that on their taxes or something else. So by setting up that code and explaining that, the payment system didn't have to change. So in 90 days, when the management company no longer has that policy of, we're going to take your credit cards, we just uncheck the boxes, and it all goes back to normal. So it was really just trying to go, how do we help but minimally disrupt the settings and the policies that we have in place, right? So those are the things that we came up with. When you are in states that have to waive late fees, instead of turning it off because you really need to track those things, we create codes that track the reversal of that, or where that goes, right? So in payments, we did see that. We did see where they extended the late periods to say, well, they weren't charging late fees, but they also were saying, hey, if you pay by the 19th, we're going to allow 2 payments. I've seen companies come out and say, if you pay your May rent early, you're going to enter a drawing for a $500 gift card. So now we're preparing for May, and they're coming up with different plans to say, because now the mode that we're in is, we made it past April. Now we want to monitor May. So we're looking at our delinquency. We're looking at they created hardship forms. We created an online link for a lot of our customers where they could do that through email with a link. They could fill out a hardship paperwork, sign it electronically, and then go through approval process for either a deferred rent payment. So those are some of the tools that we came into play, and now we're trying to see what happens in May.
That's interesting. And so, yeah, I'm fascinated by your depth of knowledge in navigating all of this. And I think that, again, talks about the work you've done in the business on the operational side, but also understanding all the different technologies, because you work with most all of the other platforms out there, I would suspect. And
I work with all the platforms and then all the ancillary platforms. So all that great technology that's been coming out, I love to meet with them and understand and how they integrate, how we can support them. So I'm very platform agnostic and willing to help in any way we can.
Yeah, and so if somebody in an organization, if they don't have somebody in there with that type of experience that understands all these things, like where do they go? Is that what people are calling you for, or is it?
That's typically what they call us for. It's funny because I get asked all the time, like, what exactly do you do? Yeah. And I started the company because I wanted to do what I was doing at Lincoln and Prime Group and my knowledge of how the software vendors work. And I wanted to serve the industry. And so there's a team of us, there's 16 of us that work for the company, and we all are basically love our industry. We have, if you want to implement software, project management, we have a help desk that runs 8 to 8 Monday through Friday. We do property onboarding and conversions. So we do everything that, you would hire a team for. You would just outsource that to us. And because I work for a management company, sometimes it's as easy as, if you need to talk to me, just call me and I'll bill you. There's really not, I try and make it easy to be available. And because, like I said, at the end of the day, we're just wanting to help. We're wanting whatever platforms you picked, we want them to function best for you. We have companies that have come to us because they've been on their platforms for a while now, and the vendors are amazing at putting in great tools. But companies sometimes don't keep up with the release notes and they don't know that they're there. And so when this hit, it basically was, somebody says, well, I need to get a texting program. And we said, your software already does that. I need a payment agreement program. Your software already does it. It does. It does. So that's what they come to us a lot for, is like, can you help me? And it's like, we'd love to help you.
It's interesting. I've always been tracking the dynamics of the industry, and there's a lot of conversation. You see this. It's just more of an old story, which is like, I'm on the management side, and I'm a vendor, and it's like, to us, it's like, we're in business for multifamily. It's really, the shift has happened where we are now more, the innovation's happening a lot of ways with the industry partners. And I love that you're out there spending time with them. You're following prop tech, you're looking at what's next. But what's really fascinating as you talk through this, that I think is really the differentiator, is if you look at how products are introduced on panels and thought leadership and articles, and then even the noise that may come forward about, you should be doing this and you should be doing that. It's oftentimes at such a high level, maybe it's the person that, like you said, is purchasing the software, but then there's, implementing it, and then the user experience of actually what are the steps that happen when a snag happens, when a variable gets introduced. How do you respond to that, and how does that work up, the chain to make sure that ultimately everything gets done with less complexity, greatest value for the resident, and return on investment for the owner manager. But you're kind of bringing those two pieces together, which is, am I wrong in that sort of analogy?
You're absolutely right. There's three things that come to mind, Patrick. 2 or 3 years ago, there was a company that was brand new in our industry. They didn't come from our industry, but they had a great idea. And it was a friend of mine that had gone to work for them as a sales rep. and she introduced me, and they weren't, so I started having weekly meetings just to educate them on property management and the language that they would need to use when they were talking with their customers. And then I started looking at their product, and they were trying to figure out how to best present this in the industry, how to set it up. And because setting it up across the different platforms, they had to have different, ways to do this, and they were brand new. What I love today is it's like watching the baby bird leave the nest. They've grown now, and I started seeing them hire some really key executives. And every hire that I saw, some new person on LinkedIn that to me was a hero in the industry now works for this company. So when I saw him at NAA, I was like, I knew you were on track when I saw who you started to hire. The talent that you attracted, because you will not attract that level of talent unless you have a good company and a good product. So that's one way where I help the vendors. The second way is sometimes you're shifting. We're in apartments, right? And I learned and came into the industry and learned this software platform. And now I work for this company that uses this software platform, and I am lost. Because what I did over here, when I did it over here, I broke it. And then that was a support ticket, right? Because you did it, they're different. And so then what we're able to do is step in and say, okay, this is your thought, and this is what you were trying to do, but this is how you want to do it in this system. And it's a teaching, it's a translation, right? And then of course, then you work with, we've had several spin-off management companies. They took 5 properties away from a super large company. They didn't want the infrastructure. They couldn't hire that team. So they came to us. And so we watched these management companies grow. And now, one of my largest management companies that I work with is in the top 50 in MHC, and we cheer them on, and we feel part of that family. When they become our client, we feel like we are an extension of them, and we want to learn what, their challenges are. So those are the different ways that we work just in the industry, from the person that's on the field to the executive making the decision, to the vendor that's trying to work, to the IT person that's trying to make it all work together. We can help out.
That's great. I know we're getting some new hashtags. Mom Boss coming up. We've got some fun stuff happening across the webs here.
Yeah, Bruce Norville from Texas says he's excited to hear more on what new technologies are going into the industry. Yeah, you got some Go Mom Boss. I think we've got Dodger in the house, and I know your kids are so.
So here's the funny thing is like I said, I was a single mom and I worked at home, and my kids never knew what I did. And as I was having conference calls, they were trying to pass me notes, right? And I'd be like, go away, Or sometimes, so when I started, they were in high school, and I would make them sit at the table and log in. Like if I had to do like an address change, I'd say, you're at the table, you're working, you're paying for your car insurance, this kind of stuff. So then they graduated and they went to college, but I made them be leasing agents on site. And so now all the kids work for me. They're in sales and they're consulting and they're rock stars. And so it's funny how it's turned into this family thing where they went to, when Dodger was 1, he was putting pennies in the floppy drives of the computers. And I was having to take these home and take them apart just to get the pennies and nickels out, And so now he's doing support tickets. So it's funny how it's evolved. And they're like, when he went to go be a leasing agent, he came home and he goes, I now know what you do. And I was like, thank you. So
that's awesome. That's hilarious. I don't know if our kids really understand what we do either. We're doing the same thing, trying to expose them as much as we can.
Well, they're giving us intel because last night I get a text this morning that there was 15 million viewers on a Fortnite concert by Travis Scott. And so I watched it. I was like, show me that.
Yeah.
And I was like,
incredible.
wow, that's pretty cool. Now, another guy you want to follow is Kerry Kirby, absolute technology innovator, and he's quiet. He's an underground guy. Like he's building stuff. You got to watch what he's building. But think about like leasing an apartment, like the way that if anybody's seen Fortnite, how they move through rooms and all of these things. Well, how do you know what to focus on? What would you tell an executive today, really, or anybody looking to be part of what happens next in multifamily? How do you cut through the noise? What channel do you look at? There's so much coming at us.
Well, and one of the things, whenever we go and meet with a client to begin with, we basically learn how they're doing current business. And I have sort of like a visual diagram that I walk through, and I check the boxes of what are you using today, right? Do you have a website? Are you displaying pricing and availability? Are you automatically communicating with your ILS services? Are you, how are you doing your marketing platform? And then I make a list, right, of the gaps, things, the basic things. There's just basic things that you have to have today. So I want to make sure that they've got their basics covered. Your property management, when we come in, is it live? What are you doing manually outside the system through spreadsheets that we may need to look at alternatives? And why are you doing this spreadsheet? What's the purpose of this? And it's very interesting that I hear this story all the time, and I say, this woman was going to cook a ham, and she cut it off, and she would always cut the end off, right? And then her husband was asking her, why are you always doing that? Well, this is how I was taught. And she goes, well, she goes and asks the grandmother, and the grandmother says, well, my pan wasn't big enough, so I always had to cut the end off to fit it in the pan. So you have to sometimes rethink, why am I doing this? And so those are the questions that we ask. So we kind of come in and make a list, and then we want to complete their package. Okay, if you're not embracing the electronic leases, then that's something we need to do. If you're not storing your documents in the system and making it to where a regional doesn't have to do a site visit in order to see a lease, right, then that's a target for improvement, and it's everything. How are your service technicians? There's these mobile apps that are coming out. I remember one of the biggest things that I was super, super excited about, I would go on due diligence walks, and that's an eye-opening when you're going into people's apartments, right, and you're cataloging, and it was a clipboard, and there was a team, and it was a clipboard. And I was then trying to find the technology that would help us. And then we were going back and giving those clipboards to an admin who was putting them in an Excel spreadsheet. So I was trying to find a tool where we could automate that, and we were in the field and we could key it in. And back in the day, and I'm showing my age, back in the day, the unit was $6,000. It was a headset. You could talk into it, but it just wasn't there, right? It was just basically populating the spreadsheet. And now look how far we've come. We have apps out there that are on tablets where we can put what we want them to look at. We can take pictures, we can have pricing in there, we can produce these amazing reports, we can do lease file audits right there, and I've been a subject matter expert to help these companies understand some of those things. When they were young, I built their end user documentation, or I was their help desk. And so now they've built into these big teams and companies, and it's exciting. Right. And so those are the things that are technology wise, that it's like, what are you doing on paper? So then I go and look at it and go, okay, do you have a collections agency? Are you integrated with them? What are you sending automatically? What's your deposit program? Are you aware of these other deposit programs? Do these fit your needs? So anytime I come across, and that's why I always like to be at the technology expos, and when I hear about something, I like to go and find out what they're doing. And you mentioned Kerry Kirby. I love Kerry Kirby, and I love his vision, and how he sees the industry and how he improves it for everybody. I love that his websites are ADD compliant and things like that, because I didn't think about that until I had a conversation with Kerry, and he opened my mind. I didn't think about people needing to go to a website and find an apartment that might be impaired in some way. And it changed my heart, and it changed my mind. So I love to talk to Carrie and Melinda anytime I can. So like I said, I go to trade shows, and I just go to each booth, introduce myself, and I want to know about their technology, and anything I can do to help, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah. That's great. I notice, I mean, you mentioned carrying a memorable story. If you finding and learning about an opportunity, it's, it's really knowing how to, you should do something because it's a regulated rule. And then there's the other side of it, which is like, hey, you should do this because it's really a good thing to do. So two different ways to look at technology in that aspect. Kim, it's been an amazing time with you here today. Are there any?
Thank you for having me. I very much enjoyed it. As you can see, I can talk forever. So just if you get me started, that's what I love to come to your conferences, because I sit at a table and I meet the most interesting people and we have great conversations. And sometimes we find solutions to problems that they didn't have a solution to. So thank you for having us.
Yeah, very exciting. So any final thoughts you want to leave our viewers with?
Now, just, we're all going to make this through, and I'm excited to see how our industry changes. I think it's a scary time, but I think we're shoring each other up. I think we're having Zoom happy hours and finding ways to stay connected. And so I want some of that to keep going. I want, sometimes after the crisis ends, we all go back to the way we did things. And I'm really hoping that they don't. So everybody stay safe. And if you need help, we're here.
All right. What's the website? I know, is it the KSC
It's the
group?
KSC group. So it's www.thekscgroup.com. And if you need just information, you want to send an email, it's info@thekscgroup.com. And that will go to one of my team members, and we'll make sure and follow up with you. And I don't think I think I didn't mention that we did training as well. I think I said we did implementation, data conversion, support, training, consulting, all that. So we kind of, like I said, we do whatever management companies do to shore up their operations team. That's basically what we do.
Yeah, and certainly reaching out just for at least opening the conversation, how to think about a problem and those types of things. It's exciting to have you on again. We'll be spending more time with you as we move through the year here. But thank you again, Kim. Appreciate you carving out the time.
Thank you so much, Kim.
It. Take care.
All right. She's
I
awesome.
just love her so much, and I love that with her experience from where she started, she has seen the evolution of all these different technologies, and not only does she know it from the tech side, but she really has a deep understanding of the management side and what these leasing agents are doing every day. And I loved how she said, I see what you wanted to do, and I understand why and how it worked in this platform. So let's get you, to where it works for you, where you are now. Like, I love that she just has the knowledge to transition.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, I look at it like anything that you do, you want to do it with confidence and having an understanding. There's a happy medium between, I'm going to try something, and sometimes the people that are rolling these things out, it's their job to do something. They do the wrong move, it impacts the organization in a material way.
Right.
They're thinking they're going to lose their job. There's a lot at risk.
Absolutely.
Right. So having the confidence, having somebody like Kim to sort of due diligence, or am I asking the right questions?
Right.
Can I see around a corner? What am I missing here? What else is possible? All of those things. That's a great tool to have. And there's so many companies that are changing and shifting and pivoting and all of these things. But there's one. I mean, I know the one Kim. And I know she's scaling her team, but I would like to look at, and maybe that's in her training, is look at how do you scale some of those things so companies can minimize impact to shifts in opportunities. Now, moving beyond, I think, this sort of current state, everything that she's talking about is still what we should have been doing anyway.
Right.
Right. How do you make it easier for the customer? Things like that.
Well, and like she said, hopefully some of these things that we're doing right now because of the situation we're in continue, because some things are great. I mean, I'm having Zoom calls with my family across the country, which was not something that we did prior to this, but is something I hope continues after the world goes, back to whatever the new way is going to be.
Yeah, fun show. I will tell you guys, listen, in the comments, if you've got a guest, tag them in the comments. You think somebody that would be great for you to amplify their mission, their vision, extract their knowledge, and so others can tune into that. Obviously, we get viewers from YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, on multifamilystudios.com. All of those elements, we want to hear from you. Amplify those that are doing great things in innovation, leadership, and technology in multifamily. So with that, I'm Patrick Antrim, Carrie Antrim. We'll see you guys in the next show.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Have a great weekend.